Live hitting. That was the name of the game for the Eagles on Tuesday, who held their 5th training camp practice of the summer, and one that would invoke plenty of physicality and surprises along the way. Here's all you need to know from another day down at the Novacare complex. Before we dive into today's takeaway though guys, make sure you leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and of course drop your opinions down in the comments on everything we talk about in this video. Thank you so much for all of your support over the last few months. We promise we've got plenty more lined up, and if you want your daily dose of Philadelphia sports content, head to phillysportsnetwork.com for content from myself and all of our writers at PSN. We'll kick things off with the most explosive storyline in the room, and that comes from Central Michigan's Joe Ostman. It was a huge day for the defensive end, who has had quite the hype train building around him for the last year or so. The star of 2018 scout team has enjoyed quite an impressive camp this year, but Tuesday's live hitting played very nicely into his breakout. With 3 sacks and a tackle for a loss to his name, Ostman, on the surface at least, was frankly exploding and nothing could stop him. The lone thing to bear in mind though is the man who was tasked with extinguishing said fire. Ostman may have got to Miles Sanders in the backfield for a tackle for a loss and then sacked Nate Sudfeld for the 2nd day in a row, but the man trying to prevent him from doing so was Jordan Mailata, the project offensive tackle. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm taking anything away from what was clearly a very strong practice, but it's not like this was against Lane Johnson or even Andre Dillard for that matter. With his huge plays coming against a tackle who is still fundamentally raw, context is important, but it's also a sign of the inverse too. If Mailata is struggling mightily against Osman, that's not a glowing observation given the mountain he has to climb this offseason. It's the first we've heard from Mailata this year, and it adds some sharp context after a stunning first preseason play in the sport. There's a long way to go for both of these players, but it looks like Osman is certainly trending in the right direction, while Mailata may have a tougher road than many first expected. After Doug Peterson stated that his rookie running back would be eased into training camp after picking up a hamstring injury, Tuesday's practice showed plenty of promise for Miles Sanders. 5-yard touchdown run inside the red zone and a wheel route later on in the day, Sanders seemed to be getting plenty of attention early on. Eagles seem to be experimenting with different ways of getting the ball into the hands of the young playmaker, and who can blame them? Seeing wheel routes in training camp is an exciting prospect. We know how lethal Corey Clement and Darren Sproles have been on sit mesh concepts over the last 2 years, and adding someone as explosive as Sanders into that mix certainly warrants taking note of. Expect to see plenty more of Sanders as camp progresses and his workload to slowly start increasing as he becomes more familiar with the playbook. It's fair to say that so far training camp has been headlined by Deshaun Jackson, but today was an opportunity for another wide receiver to snatch some rays in the sun. That man was Nelson Agholor, the team's starting slot receiver who stood out from the pack on Tuesday. Agholor caught a few bombs deep down the field and even caught a flea flicker, which of course will bring back plenty of NFC Championship game memories. Target share is going to be a concern in 2019, but with Agholor's $9 million cap hit, it makes sense to give him a fairly chunky slice of the pie. That could become difficult with 12 personnel looking to become even more popular due to the emergence of Dallas Goedert, but with performances like this, Agholor is doing well to remind the Eagles just how dangerous he can be. It feels weird seeing so much positivity around cornerback play in training camp. We've become so accustomed to seeing player X was burned by player Y again, or X is really struggling against Y. Instead, it's pass breakups, it's interceptions, and the man at the centre of it all this year is former 2nd round pick Sidney Jones. Breaking up a deep ball to Nelson Agholor in the end zone in one-on-one, Jones had another good day at the office and has been one of camp's biggest standouts. As of right now, he figures to be the starting nickel corner, but if Maddox does transition to safety for a short while, it's likely he'll be taking CB1 and 2 reps alongside Darby and Douglas. Either way, Jones will be firmly in the starting picture, which is huge as he enters a critical 3rd year of his NFL career. Enough. On a day I published an article stating how former Houston quarterback Greg Ward Jr. will be hoping that the 3rd time is the charm for his chances of making the Philadelphia Eagles roster. He has an impressive day of catches, in regular reps with the first team and catching everything thrown in his direction. The Eagles obviously like what they see in Ward, and this is his best chance to make the roster since originally transitioning to wide receiver. Can Ward Jr. finally overcome the odds and stick on the final 53? If he can enjoy another strong preseason, don't write it off. A successful stint in the Alliance of American Football has boded very well for his career, and the Eagles clearly like what they see by this point in his development. By this point, Carson Wentz has been so consistent in camp that it's become the norm. He's connecting on deep balls, completing passes all over the field, and looks as good as he ever has, which is frankly music to the ears of any Eagles fan. Today was no different. He completed his first 5 passes out on the field, and then had back-to-back deep touchdown connections to Deshaun Jackson and Nelson Agholor, which is just, again, absolutely poetic. What I really like though is a variety of passes being reportedly thrown. We're not just seeing bombs to D-Jacks or shots down the field, we're seeing wheel routes to running backs, intermediate completions, and a nice spread of the ball, which is huge for a season where target share is going to be a focus. As for the other quarterbacks, well, Nate Sudfeld's topsy-turvy camp continues, with flashes of improvement being shrouded by ball placement mistakes that haunted him last preseason. He had a great throw into the end zone today that was perfectly thrown to Shelton Gibson, but then threw an interception when targeting 6'6" receiver Carlton Agholor that was picked off by Jeremiah McKinnon. Clayton Thorson, on the other hand, is now missing wide open running backs in the flat, so that's a thing. And finally, a slightly worrying moment occurred at practice earlier when owner Jeffrey Lurie had his legs ripped from under him at the end of a play. The players who accidentally ran into Lurie picked the owner straight back up, and he seemed to be fine, which is good news. But props to Jeffrey Lurie for being so willing to get close to the action and wanting to be involved in training camp as opposed to taking a back seat. It's that level of passion and involvement that has helped the Eagles become one of the NFL's most recognisable franchises in the last 10 years or so. So a big shout to Jeffrey Lurie there, and we're happy, of course, that he's okay. But that is it, guys, for another day of training camp headlines. What were your takeaways? Let me know down in the comments. And who do you want to see content on as preseason rolls around? We've got plenty lined up for you, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Myself, Liam Jenkins, and my sore throat. You can follow me at Liam Jenkins PSN on Twitter. I'll see you next time.